is TAW Unwrapped, unwrapping the big talking points from football across the world from Liverpool. I'm joined today by Beth, Lindop, Kieran, Molyneux and Adam Smith. I am, of course, Josh Sexton, and we're brought to you in association with the great people at NordVPN today. You can get our exclusive NordVPN deal at nordvpn.com/TAW. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. If you go for the 2-year plan, you'll get 6 months for free to browse the internet with that extra peace of mind and the ability to change your virtual location so you can access geo-locked content, which can allegedly be used for things like Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs. But I'll say no more on that matter because we're going to move on to the topic of today's episode, which is an idea actually suggested to Neil after Brentford from a much lower base, but I believe there's still merit in discussing it with you lovely people here today, which is life after Mo Salah. So it's become customary with TAW Unwrapped. I like to break this down into a couple of sections to give us a few different angles to approach the topic from. So today we're going to go with short-term planning for life after Salah, so what we can do while Salah's still here. Long-term planning for life after Salah, so once he is gone and departed Liverpool, and then Salah's own career ambitions too. But we'll start with the short-term, which I've badged in terms of the chronologicality of it. That was nowhere near close, was it? But I'm going to go with it anyway.
Roll with it.
Which is before the summer. So how do you start to plan while he's still here? Liverpool were decent with the succession planning once upon a time, but seem to have become a little more reactive recently, Beth. Before we get onto the external and sort of longer term options, I want to look at the internal short term options the Reds can test out, particularly during AFCON. The first, I think, would be a formation change, and it feels the most natural. I think me and you have been on shows with Gutman this year where he's sort of alluded to wanting to see more of this now, where it's Ekitike and Isak as a front two and Wirtz just behind them, and that sort of feels the most natural to me, really, because you've got these, I mean, for a start, two really expensive footballers with three, if you throw Wirtz into the occasion, three very talented footballers as well, no matter what we've seen or not seen of Isak and Wirtz so far, albeit Wirtz has now started to arrive to the party. So that feels like the one where Salah goes away for AFCON, you can look towards that, and maybe that's some semblance of planning for life after Salah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you know, there will have obviously been conversations over the summer. I think one thing that frustrated me when a lot of people have been talking about Isak is people saying, oh, well, Liverpool didn't need Isak. They just went and it was almost like a bit gluttonous that they went and they got the striker. But, you know, first of all, two strikers who were at the club last summer, you know, obviously for very different reasons, are no longer there. So pretty much every top club has two strikers. So that argument to me never really felt quite right. And then also, I suppose the difference is that you've got two big money strikers that have come in, and you've not got one who's going to be sat content to be sitting on the bench. But that must have been a thought within the minds of the recruitment team and on a slot when these players were brought in. So there must have been at some point conversations about how the two might play together. It was obviously talked about a lot earlier on in the season. I think in a way that problem has almost been taken out of Slot's hands the last month or so. Obviously with Isak not being available, it's just meant obviously by default that the Ekitike starts. Now obviously on the other side of the international break, touch wood, there's no injuries to either of them. You know, he's going to have a decision to make, and I do think that is. It seems like the most logical decision. It is maybe shifting formation ever so slightly. But then you obviously have to look at how that impacts the players behind and the personnel that they've got behind. I would like to see it. I'd like to see, you know, if they could form some sort of strike partnership. I think, you know, Ekitike, you can definitely see a world where Ekitike is maybe just ever so slightly deeper and it is sort of threading balls through a little bit for Isak, and then if they've got Wirtz behind them as well, that could be a real option. So yeah, I think that is something. I think the thing is as well, I mean, obviously he's going to be missing for a significant chunk of the season, Salah, with AFCON. But, you know, when we're talking about planning for life after him and evolving away from him a bit, I guess the thing to remember is he's still Liverpool's top scorer this season. And, you know, that's not by a country mile. You know, there's players in and around him who've got, I think Gakpo's on one less than him maybe, and Ekitike as well. But despite the fact that Mo Salah has been, by his own standards, poor in terms of his output this season and his overall performances, he is still the top scorer. And so he definitely still has a massive role to play in this team. And it's on the likes of Ekitike and Isak to prove that they can be Liverpool's main man, because Salah's done that. And that's why we can give him that little bit of extra grace, because we know that even if he's going through a rough patch now, there is every chance he comes through the other side of it. But like you say, you do have to start planning for a future without him. And especially when he's at AFCON, I think playing Ekitike and Isak alongside each other is definitely an option.
Yeah, and if we were to stick with the formation that we currently have, Adam, and like it's tricky with formation, I think, because it feels like you always go back to that Klopp episode of Monday Night Football where he sort of talked about, formations are only really for the team sheet before the game. It's not necessarily, it's more like roles than positions that players play now. But I want to sort of park Jeremy Frimpong for a second because I want to come into him in terms of his own point. But in terms of the forward options, it feels like the only one that Slot ever really used off the right instead of Salah was Luis Diaz last season, and this season it feels much more like our attackers that we have at the moment are pigeonholed. Maybe Chiesa is the only one who has sort of floated around a little bit, but even then we've barely seen Chiesa off the right. I can think of maybe a handful of times in sort of FA Cup or not FA Cup, League Cup games so far where we have seen Chiesa off the right. It feels like Ekitike is just nominally a striker now. Isak we've not seen a lot of, but it feels like he's probably just nominally a striker. Gakpo is just always off the left. Rio and Gamoa is always off the left as well. So it doesn't really seem like there's any of the forward options that you can naturally look to be like, well, we don't need to change formation because we can just throw this fella out onto the right as another forward option. Yeah,
it's what's interesting is we've done it twice in the Champions League, didn't we? Where we've rested Mo, to be euphemistic about it. And the first time it was Frimpong who he played out there, and then the second time was it that he asked Isak to pull over that way, and he had Ekitike going through the middle. Was that what he chose to do? I think. Yeah, I mean, look, the obvious name I think is Chiesa, but I think he's maybe killed someone in Slot's family because he's just not allowed to start football matches. I just don't really know what's gone on there. It's bizarre, but personally, I would like to see Chiesa given a chance out on the right to get a few games, in a row under his belt. That is what I would look to do when AFCON comes around and Salah's not there. We cannot pick him. That's full stop. And I think for all of the money that we spent in the summer, we still don't look like we've got loads of options where you would want them almost. And that's I think a problem for the manager and for maybe the club's recruitment team that we're in this situation where we've spent a not insignificant sum, and yet you're looking at it and going, well, if Salah doesn't play there, then it's just makeshift, because we knew it was going to AFCON. That isn't a surprise. So you have to hope that the manager has got an idea of what he was going to do when Salah was there. And if that idea was to put Frimpong there, which was the first thing he tried when he did not play Salah was to put Frimpong there, which everybody also talked about when we signed him as well. Everyone was sort of saying, oh, you could use him when Salah goes to AFCON. Well, we're now finding out he's maybe not as physically robust as we need him to be if he's the person who we were going to turn to all the time. He's obviously had trouble adapting to the physicality of the Premier League, and he's picked up a couple of injuries on the back of it. So it's a puzzler for the manager, which I think is maybe something he doesn't need, because there's puzzles all over the pitch, as our recent form suggests.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Kieran. It does feel like he's being sort of backed into a corner a little bit, and that's where I wonder whether that formation change does become the sort of main thing that's on his mind, really. And listen, it may have been in his long-term plans anyway, but Adam mentions with Frimpong there, he sort of has felt like the more obvious option so far in terms of what the manager has gone to, but there's issues with his fitness. I think there's an issue with like us going towards an increased over-reliance on Conor Bradley and how much he is exposed just by opposition tactics as much as Liverpool's tactics, really. Like there clearly is, as you saw at City at the weekend, a focus on letting Liverpool have the ball on that right-hand side of centre-half, if not just necessarily Bradley. And then Doku and Vinny Jr. were clearly, sent there to target Conor Bradley because they thought he was a weak spot. And in Doku's case, he gets some success there, albeit I think Bradley played quite well. But then against Vinny Jr., Vinny sees no success, and Bradley's absolutely all over him all game. So, like Conor Bradley, if he does become your main right-back option, does that free up Frimpong? Or then do you have the issue of, well, if you're playing both of them and then one of them gets injured, the other fella is going to have to be the right-back for a bit as well, and then suddenly you're back to square one anyway?
I think part of the reason we signed Frimpong is because it was a great value deal, and there's potentially could play in two positions.
Versatile, yeah.
Whether that was at the start of the season, I thought it would be teams that sit back a lot more. You'd see Frimpong up the other end of the pitch helping Mould, and teams like Man City, for example, you'd see Conor Bradley trying to deal with Doku. He's been limited with his choices because of Frimpong's fitness. I actually think in recent weeks, Frimpong would have actually got a game over Mo Salah. And that's not because he's scoring less than anybody else, but as you said, by his standards, it's not been his level. Now, it's fine if you're not going to post the same numbers and assists as last year, which is an unbelievable season, but it's the work rate. Like, if you're not playing great, if you're not scoring loads of goals and assisting loads of goals, I want to see you busting a gut. And I think the manager does as well, because the big thing with Liverpool at the minute is they're not winning the battles, they're not winning first balls, they're not winning second balls. So you look to your senior players, you look to your experienced players to set the standard. And for me, at the minute, a lot of our senior players, the ones who are letting us down, and I don't just necessarily mean performance-wise, I mean actual energy on the pitch, desire to win a ball back. So I think if Frimpong was fitter, we would have seen him come in over Mo, given the fact as well that he's got to go to AFCON soon and we're going to have to find a replacement for him. So I think he would have had a look at that. In terms of Mo Salah and his performances, I don't think he's been necessarily worse than anybody else. So he'll get a lot of the flack because he normally scores the most goals and he creates the most goals. Now, I will say his performances have been below par by his standard again, but so have the other Liverpool players. And I'm not going to single out Mo Salah this season because although we could have done better, every single one of our senior players could.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to look at some of the sort of external hires. I'm calling them, Beth, but the shorter term ones, because like you're looking at the picture at the moment. And I was talking about this in the summer as well before Harvey Elliott left the club, and he's not playing for Aston Villa, and Liverpool may be in need of more reinforcements. Someone who's left-footed who could play off the right foot, for example. And I wonder whether there is a world where Liverpool and Villa just sort of turn around in January and Villa go, listen, our manager doesn't fancy this lad. We don't want to pay the 30-odd million that's going to come in the summer. If we do play him enough and he meets that requisite of games, we'd rather he just went back to Liverpool and Liverpool just go, listen, moving Harvey on has not worked. Maybe Slot sits down with the player and goes, we're sorry that move didn't work out for you. We think there's a chance for you to play games here, especially while Salah's away. And maybe that becomes the easiest one that they do shake hands on.
Yeah, although the issue is with that is Salah goes away. I mean, there's obviously a lot. Yeah, there's a bit of a club versus country thing, isn't there? For, not just for Salah, for a lot of the players going to AFCON. I think, some of the clubs want the players as early as sort of like the beginning of December, like 8th, 9th December.
Oh, really? Is that earlier?
There's 2 Liverpool fixtures, isn't there?
Yeah, it's the Inter Milan.
The Inter Milan game. And who's the other game?
Right.
Either side of that.
It's the one after that. I
Either way, there's a league game in Inter Milan.
So the club, the national team are playing a friendly, and that is why they want him now. Now, from what I've heard and what I've seen, I think it looks like Salah is probably going to push to stay at Liverpool. I think Salah would rather play in those fixtures and then go off to AFCON, hopefully with a couple of wins under his belt, a couple of goals. But there is a world where maybe he goes beginning of December, at which point, at that time of the year, the fixtures are so thick and fast that by the time, as you agree, even, as you said, even if Harvey Elliott does end up coming back to the club, which I think could definitely be something that happens, you've already played sort of 2/3 of those festive fixtures, really. So it is a tough one. I think I feel sorry for Harvey. I think we all saw Villa as being a really good move for him, and it felt at the time like a very good move for him in the sense that they're a club that play attacking football, and it's a great manager in Emery and great fan base, great stadium. But it obviously hasn't worked out for him so far. And I also think one of the things that Liverpool are missing so much at the moment is just pace. Like, they just look, which is slightly insane when you consider, they've bought both Ekitike and Isak, both Kirkers fast. Frimpong obviously crazy fast. So it did feel like they'd addressed the pace quite a bit with the signings that they made in the summer. And Wirtz isn't slow and he's not super fast, but
to be fair, though, about 3 of them haven't been playing.
Yeah, well, that is a big part of the problem. But I think, especially against City, Liverpool at the best they were so explosive, so fast, so dynamic, so good at getting from one end of the pitch to the other. And this season they've not looked like that. And I think, unfortunately for Harvey, that's probably the biggest drawback to him as a footballer, isn't it? Is his pace. So that wouldn't necessarily, I think, help in that sense. But I think if there are conversations in January, I don't think anyone would be averse to having Harvey Elliott back as an option. I felt when he left, he obviously left. Did he leave on deadline day or the day before?
Yeah.
It was late in the window. I was a bit disappointed because by that point I'd sort of thought he's probably going to stick around and be an option. But it comes down to him and what he wants, and maybe he sort of thinks to himself, well, that chapter of my life is behind me now, and yeah. But even if he were to come back, you've got a good spell of fixtures before that, where you'd still need to find a solution.
I think if Harvey Elliott came back to Liverpool, it would be to look after the player more than to look after the starting.
Yeah.
Given the fact that the manager's gone on about Isak not having a full pre-season or game time for every single time we've played, and he's not been in the squad, to bring back Harvey Elliott, who left late in the window and hasn't played any football, that to be your answer, I think that I'd have its critics, to be honest. But for the good of the player, if he's not playing, I'd probably look to bring him back in to try and get him a better move as opposed to anything else. I don't think Harvey Elliott's going to be the answer to Mo Salah on the right-hand side. That's
the thing, Adam. I wonder if it's more just as a taking stock option than anything else, really. Like, it helps the player out. It could help Liverpool out. It feels like one of those things where it could end up being a win-win for both player and club, because Harvey clearly wants to play for Liverpool Football Club. I'm sure he'd have loved to have made his career a success here as opposed to anywhere else. And then if you look beyond that, in terms of who Liverpool can recruit in January, I mean, Antoine Semenyo is a name that never really seems to go away. The rumours around him are still persistent. I don't think Ghana qualified for AFCON, so he won't be going away in January either. I just wonder what is the more likely outcome of those two. Is it like Keogh says, that Liverpool just go and recruit someone else and appreciate that chapter of Harvey Elliott, and Liverpool's time almost is closed, or is there a chance that Harvey does come back to the club?
I think Keogh's point's really good. That he's not match fit, you would say. So you've got that problem to confront. But maybe the bigger problem is the fact that the manager doesn't rate him. Yeah. Like, we might all disagree with him. Jurgen Klopp, when he left, said, I wish I'd played Harvey more. That was what the former manager was saying to the new manager, like, give this lad a chance. Like, my biggest regrets I didn't play him more. And yet Slot, for whatever reason, just doesn't like him. So I think if you're, Richard Hughes saying to the manager, look, we've spoken to Villa, we can get Harvey back. The manager's just like, well, what good does that do? Yeah. I'm not going to play him. I've made clear I'm not going to play him. I've given the go-ahead for him to leave the club. So I don't really see what use it is, really, in terms of bringing him back if the manager doesn't trust him and he's not fit enough to be able to fit straight in and cover Salah anyway. So on that front, I think the Semenyo one, that's the name that's been mooted for a while now, isn't it, as the long-term successor to Salah. So if you could get that done in January, if that's something that you feel like you can do, and it would have to be, as in first day of the window, it's done, not drawn out Isak-like saga.
It has Christmas tree on the 27th.
Exactly, exactly that. Like, that's what it has to be, isn't it, really? To come in, cover Salah, and be a kind of replacement for Salah when Salah's not playing very well. And look, I think the difficult thing in the entire Salah conversation, which is the elephant in the room almost, is I think of all of the players, and I think all of them have been hit by what happened to Diogo Jota. I think Salah is the one that it is weighed the heaviest on. I think
you've seen it against Bournemouth.
Yeah. I think it almost looked like he was physically carrying the grief with him.
But before the goal and before he cried against Bournemouth, there was a moment where he was pushing in the box and like almost fighting with someone, and I seen him like, that's not Mo Salah.
Yeah.
Just not him at all. And then he gets the goal and he's crying in front of the crowd. It's quite clear he's affected.
Exactly that. So I think that there is an issue around Salah that is there. I think he looked better against Villa, and I think he looked maybe one of his best performances of the season against Real Madrid. Yeah. But then against City, we've gone back to just not really contributing at all. And I think it's understandable. I think that this is something that far too many people around Liverpool in general this season have been quick to brush under the carpet and be like, forget about it, it's not a thing. It is a thing, and it's big on Salah, and that is something that potentially going away to AFCON, getting away from Liverpool, getting away from you know, all of the things that remind him of Jota. And, you know, look, I understand why it happens. I completely understand why it happens. And I think it started with the best intentions. But the crowd reminding them all of Jota every time 20 minutes comes up on the clock, I don't think is helping anybody on the pitch either. And Salah, I think, is just being dragged down by that. Being able to get away from all that maybe for a little while, potentially, whereas normally he comes back from AFCON and we're like, oh shit, we've got post-AFCON Salah where he's crap for a month or so. Maybe this time he comes back a little bit lighter, a little bit, you know, having got away from it all, which would then reduce the need to go out and get somebody else. But of course, by the time that happens,
We're in the running.
we're already at the point where you need somebody else to have come in. So I think Semenyo is the one. If that is the long-term Salah replacement, if you like, that everybody has mooted it being for quite a while now, if that's what they are planning, and there is a world in which they can get that deal done with Bournemouth for the basically day one of the window, then that is the route that I think they should go down. Bar that, I think it has to be an internal solution, because I mean, I don't know who the runners and riders are of who else could be out there.
One more point on the Harvey Elliott thing as well, from a business perspective. It's an obligation to buy, not an option, isn't it? If he plays a certain amount of games.
Yeah, I think the issue is he's probably not going to play in that
Of course,
amount.
but if Billy get a bad injury, or
Yeah.
get a couple of bad injuries, and are forced to play Harvey Elliott, Liverpool will get a fee for him that they've agreed. So from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense to go, come back here and train with us for a little bit. Because if Villa end up having to play 15, 20 games between now and the end of the season, then we get the fee. Yeah. So short term, I think, I don't think there is a fix apart from getting Mo Salah playing or playing Frimpong when he's fit.
Yeah, you just reminded me that Oxlade-Chamberlain's been training with Arsenal recently. I'm fuming about that, but maybe we get him back. Maybe that's the answer here. I want to move on to look at the long term. So I'm calling this the sort of summer and beyond, Beth, because like Semenyo falls into this category as well, really. Like Adam mentions there, that if it's going to happen in January, you know, from Liverpool's point of view, it's got to be early in January. The later Liverpool leave it, and obviously, you know, Semenyo, he would be for life, not just for Christmas. Is the point to make there? But like, it is not him. Then who is it on the market? It feels like he sort of fits into that Salah mold. And I think, you know, Adam mentioned the reason why I feel like his name keeps coming up in sort of who will replace Mo Salah stakes, really, is because he does fit into that mold. He's not left-footed, he is right-footed, but he's got that sort of inside forward edge to him where it's not just sort of like hitting the byline and putting a cross, and it's I'll cut in early and I'll you know, do my man on the inside, and then suddenly I'm through on goal and between the posts. And it feels like in terms of the goal contributions he'd had for Bournemouth as well, you know, Kieran mentioned it in reference to Salah before. They are up there, not with Salah, but they're up there in terms of sort of Premier League relativity. And if he goes to a better team, which we all think Liverpool are, then maybe that can take another leap. So do we think that's one that's more likely to happen in summer maybe than it is in January?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with the Semenyo links, and I really, really like Semenyo, and I think Liverpool obviously are admirers of him, but I think in a sense, you always don't know how much of that is just a convenient link, because he's been one of the best forwards in the Premier League, and he's gettable in the sense that he's probably going to move on from Bournemouth next summer, if not in January. And so it will depend on whether Liverpool think that he is that long-term answer. I think certainly if you look now and you think, what does Liverpool's squad need? I think someone who's versatile, who's got his sort of pace and guile would be a perfect option, but he's not going to come cheap. I think he's got a release clause of about 65 million, I think. So, you know, it's not crazy in terms of today's market, but it is still, you know, it's not a small sum of money. So I think Liverpool would obviously have to be convinced that he was the right person, the right profile. I think also if you're looking at next summer, you know, he's probably going to have his pick of clubs, isn't he? And maybe that's a world where if Liverpool do genuinely view him as someone that they really want, that maybe they do sort of a Diaz and bring him in January, because he's, you know, to ward off other suitors, because, you know, I think he's an Arsenal fan. If you ask me now, I think Arsenal probably win the league this season. I mean, there's obviously things that can happen between now and then, but you know, so if Arsenal were to come in for him next summer, and Liverpool as well, you know, you've got to think, what is the more attractive destination for him? So yeah, I think it very much depends on how much of it is actually Liverpool really genuinely view him as a long-term part of the plan, or how much is it is just sort of fans and media and stuff thinking, well, it would make sense for him to go to Liverpool. I think Elise is the other one, isn't it? Is the obvious, is the other one who I think Liverpool do like. But again, I'm pretty sure every top club likes Michael Elise, and I think Bayern now, you know, there was the last few years I've always sort of felt like Bayern was not a step down from Liverpool, but a sideways step. Obviously, they're a huge club and massive and so successful in Germany. But I think, you know, in terms of the Champions League, and listen, they've won the Champions League more recently than Liverpool. So, but I just sort of think like they've not been pulling up trees for really the last few years. Whereas I think now you look at them and you think, right, they could be a real force, not just in Germany, but in Europe as well. So again, it's not as easy as just saying to Michael Olise, like, you know, we want you, come to Liverpool. So again, it just depends on who Liverpool think is the better fit long term, because they're not going to just splash money on someone in January for the sake of trying to save the season if they don't feel that the right fit long term.
Yeah, there's almost a spectrum of those options, really, isn't there, Keo, in terms of Semenyo feels like the kind of opportunistic one, and we've heard that word opportunistic come up so much with Liverpool. Olise feels like the real premium option, and maybe there's a sort of sweet spot in between them with someone like Rodrigo, for example, who, you know, feels like there's an opportunity there because he doesn't get much game time for Real Madrid anymore, but he's also a premium option, and I'm looking at him, he's left-footed as well, which I think helps in this scenario in terms of wanting to replicate exactly the skill set that Salah has. There's maybe an argument he's a bit more of an unknown entity compared to someone like Semenyo because of that lack of Premier League experience. But then on the flip side of that, you know, Beth's mentioning about Bayern Munich sort of coming back to the party. Real Madrid have been at that party of getting Champions League finals and winning Champions Leagues for as long as Rodrigo has been at that football club. So he's used to playing big games, and I wonder if Liverpool can get him for a cut price. Does he represent someone that's, you know, almost a better option than the other two, really?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I like Semenyo. I think he's mustard. I think there's a possibility, given Richard Hughes' links with Bournemouth as well. That's maybe why the noise constantly comes around Bournemouth players. That would lead you to think that Liverpool have a good chance of getting him. But then you look at what happened at Anfield. I mean, you all remember the instance which happened at Anfield. It was all over the press. I mean, I'm not too sure where Semenyo sits with Liverpool fans at the minute. That might be a factor. And as you say, if he's an Arsenal fan and Arsenal go on to win the title, sort of makes his mind up a little bit, that, doesn't it? So I don't know whether Liverpool will go for him. I'd like Liverpool to go for him. The other options you've mentioned, who's the other one you mentioned then?
Olise and Rodrigo.
Olise and Rodrigo. Rodrigo didn't go away in the summer, did he? I felt at one point that Liverpool were going to put a bid in there, and maybe if he weren't tussling with Isak and whether they would or wouldn't, I think if Isak was definitely off, we might have seen a bid go in because of the value there. But I'm just not too sure on that one. Personally, I wanted it in the summer, but now I look at it, I think I don't know. So out of the three you mentioned, it's the other two for me. But it comes down to what Slot wants. It comes down to this shape. I said after Frankfurt, the diamond's the way. Yeah. Get Vert in the front of them two, and turn this right mid and left mid, the right side of the diamond. One probably going to be Szoboszlai, and the other one's probably going to be someone who can go up and down the legs. Mo Salah can't do that job at the minute. So you can't really trial this diamond, and that's why we've looked crap, because we've tried to play different systems with players that don't fit in it. We've gone back to the old way, and then we looked a lot more balanced with this midfield. So I don't think we're going to be experimenting. I don't think we've got the time or points or anything to be experimenting with formations over the next few months. But the thing is, Slot's got to sort it, because he has got to get them two strikers in on the pitch. He's got to get Vert on the pitch, and eventually I think Mo Salah will leave in the summer. I think we'll probably get onto this in a minute, but I think if part of the decision behind giving him that sort of money, I don't think Liverpool wanted to give him that contract. I think Liverpool knew there was a cliff edge coming, and I think it was more of a PR disaster with what was happening with Trent. If another one went as well, it was a nightmare. So they've laid out the money, hoping, I think, that halfway through this deal, they'll recoup some of it from a Saudi club.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective on it, Adam, and I wonder, you know, sort of coming back to Keo's point on the shape, whether, you know, we're almost looking at it a little too inside the box again, whether we're looking at it in terms of we need to replace that sort of prototype of what Mo Salah does and is as a footballer, particularly think about the left-footedness of a right winger, and whether actually what Slot is looking to move towards is kind of what we've seen from the summer, where, you know, he signs Wirtz as a very expensive number 10, he signs two number 9s who, albeit, you know, Beth mentioned that we had to sign two number 9s because we lost two number 9s in different circumstances in the summer, but maybe Slot is, you know, there's some method to that madness behind signing two very expensive ones, is that it's going to be more 9s and 10s you see coming into Liverpool now, and actually you look at the forward options that Liverpool do have, and most of them can kind of fit into that shape, really. Gakpo can be a centre forward. We've seen that for club and for country. Chiesa has definitely been both for Liverpool. Even Salah, like I always think back to, I'm pretty sure it was Bournemouth away actually a couple of seasons back, where they play Oxlade-Chamberlain behind him and Firmino as a front two. So maybe what Liverpool go and look for on the market now is just more 9s and 10s, so that they can almost build more into this mould, and that's what they can do in the summer, where, you know, obviously we make lots of moves this summer and then we have to build the plane while flying it, but the plane may already be more on its way to being constructed by that point, and then Slot can go and recruit more for the squad per se, rather than just, you know, what you had to do this summer, which was sign loads of belters at once to make it work immediately.
Yeah, I think, look, it's an obvious answer to say, and certainly in the world of football, not necessarily easy to find, but I think what most managers want is an attacker that can play in several different positions. Like, you don't want just an out-and-out number 9 necessarily in the modern era. And, you know, you look at how long it has taken Guardiola to get Haaland to properly fit into what he wants to do. Like that, look, obviously, Haaland has scored a bollock load of goals during that time, and he's won them titles, etc. But I don't think anybody would say they were natural bedfellows. And I think this is the first season where you're looking and going, oh, Haaland is doing the kind of work that Pep Guardiola expects from his players, actually. So, but he's like the exception that proves the rule, isn't he? That because he's so good at scoring goals, you've got no choice really. Yeah. And as much as Arteta might trying to make the Premier League go back to early 2000s Stoke, having a big man up front is just not the way the game is at its best anymore. It is people who move around, who interchange positions, who opposition defences don't quite know whether they're coming or going, and whom are supposed to pick up here. Wirtz is the obvious candidate of dropping into the, you know, between the lines, and does the defence go with him or does it not? What does it do? That is what I think maybe the manager would want to be in a position to be able to do. But what he's ended up with, and we won the title last season, so I don't think he's going to be complaining about it. But what he's ended up with is a Mo Salah who plays on the right. That is what Salah does. And the idea of him playing more centrally, as you kind of allude to, is just something that the manager hasn't really shown any interest whatsoever in doing. I would personally like to see that a little bit more, because I think as he's getting older, as he's less able to drop back and help the defence, as Kieran was saying before, we're putting him in the middle and having somebody else doing that work for him. That
like the John Barnes thing.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of doing that, like changing the role that you're asking him to do, reinventing him as a player. That's what they could do with him. But I think if you're going to do that, you need somebody else then who can play over on the right. And actually, the thing about, you know, Semenyo's right-footed. I mean, you're young, Josh. You know, so's Beth. To be fair, so's Keo. I'm not, right?
I was on the edge there, wasn't I?
Yeah. It's the beard.
It was kind of an afterthought, but we'll let you off.
Not into that.
It's that you'd look old and you're taller than me, so I feel like you're mature.
He's aged about 10 years
Look
over the past
old
few
as
weeks.
well. He's gone twice. He's doubled up.
Mature. I said mature. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, none of you will really remember, but oftentimes it was right-footers who played on the right. Yeah. I know all of you will only remember Salah playing on the right, but actually, you know, it's not that unusual to have a right-footed player playing on the right and a left-footed player playing on the left. That's not outrageous. So, you know, that's sort of fine. I don't think that'll bother the manager. I just don't know whether right now he knows what the way forward is, because he doesn't, even when he, if you like, has stumbled across something like the diamond that Kieran mentioned before, he's not then gone back to it. Yeah. Like, that did seem to work, but then he's not then gone back to it. He's gone back to what he was using before that wasn't really working. So I don't know whether in the conversations with Richard Hughes, whether Slot is saying this is what I need to move forward, or whether he's a little bit like, I don't really know what, like, actually, and people don't want to hear it. It's the last thing that people want to hear. But our underlying numbers haven't been terrible. And actually, a lot of the time, we've been a little bit unlucky. Yeah. We've been a little, and the manager will be looking and going, like last season, we were quite lucky sometimes. This season, we've been really unlucky sometimes. Exactly. And that'll swing back again at some point. And, you know, you have to play football teams that take luck out of the equation almost, you know, that. But again, we all know Liverpool fans, even if we were on the march to the title right now, Liverpool fans would not accept what Arteta's doing at Arsenal. So the manager has got that in the back of his head as well. I can't do that. I can't turn to that dirge that he's producing, even though it's going to potentially win the title for him, because that is not how we want to see Liverpool win a title. So I think it's so difficult for him to figure out exactly where all of the pieces fit into things. Maybe Kieran's right. I think you were right slightly when you said, that maybe they were hoping that they felt like they had to give him the new contract. But at the same time, he had his best season since the season he arrived. There was an extent to which, if we didn't know that this Salah was going to turn up this season, as I said before, I think Jota's tied up in how Salah's playing at the moment, etc. But we didn't know this was going to be the case. So if we just let him go in the summer, or even sold him, in the way that we did with Alexander-Arnold, let him go a bit early, all that. Everyone would be going, what the fuck are you doing? The season he's just had. You're not doing whatever you can to keep it.
That's exactly what I mean. There would have been a humongous backlash.
Yeah.
Now,
the others have to not just in terms
and I want to keep
Salah.
I'm not sitting here being like, I see Nick
Sure, baby.
Exactly. I just know how Liverpool think, and even though he's had an outstanding season, one of his best ever, they will put a line behind that season and go, right, how old is he? What's his date? What's the data look like?
Like you say, that's the cliff edge, isn't it?
How many miles is he covering in a game?
Yeah.
Do you know exactly what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
And they would have been, I think, prepared to go, don't care what Liverpool fans want. We've made this decision. But he had a great season. We had 3 contracts on the table that we all wanted. Every fan wanted 3 to sign. 2 out of the 3 would have been an absolute nightmare. Fast forward a few months now. Where do you think they're at with it right now? I think they're thinking that.
I think if there was a big enough bid in the summer,
exactly.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that at all.
I also think as well, like Adam's point about luck, you can apply that to Mo a little bit. Like the City game, there's been a lot of talk about Mo, and a lot of talk about how good O'Reilly was and how well O'Reilly played him. And listen, I think O'Reilly is a fantastic young player. I think he'll be fantastic for City. And he had a very good game. But actually, I thought in the early stages of that game, there were a couple of times I thought Salah had him on toast.
Yeah, I don't think he was too bad in the game.
To be honest, for their goal, they're in that corner. Liverpool let them out far too easy. Far too easy.
Yeah, and there were a couple of times he got past early on. He got past O'Reilly. And O'Reilly goes down at one point injured, and that was maybe 20 minutes into the game. And at that point, I actually thought, oh, he's got him here. He's got into his head, and then, Liverpool concede way too easily, which isn't Salah's fault. And then Salah actually provides a fantastic assist for the goal that gets chalked out. Yeah. So, and if that goes in, then you're looking at it. It's a completely different mood. It's but as it is, Liverpool are sort of the masters of their own downfall in terms of the goals that they give away in that first half, particularly the second one. They have one ruled out, so that the whole mood is so different then. And I think that is when it comes back as well to the point Adam makes about Jota, and this is, people say, well, you weren't saying this when they were winning 5, they won the first 5. But the thing is, when you are having a bit of a tough time, those things, grief and all of that emotional stuff, it becomes a lot harder to process for a lot of people, and so,
it also takes time.
Yeah, but also I just sort of think, well, Liverpool came out for that second half kind of knowing that there's probably no way they're going to win that game, because City are just the mood that they were in. They're too good. They've got too dangerous. The plays on the break is just too dangerous. You always felt like, even when Liverpool were really knocking on the door at the start of that second half, I sort of felt that City were just as likely to go up and get
it was always an uphill task.
So I think that first half, a couple of things go slightly different in that first half. Were reflected on a completely different performance from Salah. I think he actually didn't do that badly in the first half, and then I think the second he was just frustrated, and I think that when you have that frustration, then that's the difficult thing, is I think emotionally he's not quite looked the same animal as he did last season.
I'm not too sure whether it's just emotion. I can see nerves. I really can see nerves. Like, Liverpool set up at the weekend completely different to the way they did against Real Madrid. And I noticed it in the pre-match press conference when they asked him, "Are you going to basically go and change the same game plan?" And he said there's similarities, but they're not two the same sides. Now, he's right in saying that. They approached both games exactly the same when they took the game to Manchester City. He didn't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll focus on Salah particularly, and I'll come back to you on this one, Kieran, because it seems a lot like people have just resigned to this idea that, like, and listen, it doesn't necessarily have to happen in the summer. Maybe it's just at the end of Mo's contract with Liverpool, but people are just sort of almost putting him and Saudi together as like, oh, that's definitely the next stage of what's going to happen. And there's obviously political and sort of complications between those two countries, which make this a difficult thing, a difficult decision for somebody like Salah, who is so important to his country as well. So that's something that you do have to factor in. We're not just playing a game of Football Manager or FIFA here, where you can just pick him up and plonk him into this new country. But I'm wondering as well whether it's just definitely the right next step for Salah. Like, you look at what Ronaldo's gone and done over in Saudi, and I wouldn't say it's helped Ronaldo's legacy in any way. He might think in his own head, because he's so self-obsessed and he's on Piers Morgan all the time now, that it is helping his legacy. But I look at Lionel Messi in the MLS instead, and actually I see way more of Messi's highlights than I do of Ronaldo's. I see way more people still fawning over Lionel Messi than I do over Cristiano Ronaldo, and I wonder whether it's something like that that's a slightly more, I guess, conventional move for someone who's in the twilight of their career that Salah goes and does, or even just to another big club. Let's be real about it.
Oh, you could definitely do a job at another big club. Yeah, 100%. I don't know whether it's the legacy thing with Ronaldo. It hasn't helped his legacy, but it's helped him profile-wise and stuff like that.
And he's got his bank balance. Yeah, he's got 1,000 goals and all that.
And that was my next point. And his bank balance. And we all know Mo's a very humble guy, but I also know that he's got one of the most ruthless agents on the planet. That will be rubbing his hands together at the prospect of Saudi. Clubs in a bidding war for him. There's other aspects as well. He's a massive, massive star in the Arab world. He's so big. I remember the World Club Cup final. There was Egyptians there to watch him. They had their own songs for him. They were Liverpool songs. I was like, wow. And then after he won the cup, he done a lap of honour. The team done a lap of honour. Then he done a lap of honour. And from stayed for Mo Salah. He's so famous. So you think Ronaldo's big out there. You think Messi's big in America. Mo Salah going to Saudi Arabia would be one of the biggest football stories in the Middle East ever. So there's that element of it as well. Also, similar to Ronaldo, he's a numbers man. Maybe look at that league going, I'll take the piss. I'll score every week. So my goal tally's going to go up. But when that comes, I don't know, because we know that Mo's really protective or really, really into his personal stats in this country. He's handing down goals and assist records every single time he plays. And he'll have people in his sights, he'll have personal records in his sights, Liverpool players in his sights, Premier League records in his sights. So that'll be the thing he weighs up more than the political stance, in my opinion, because there's political things in this country which don't agree with his religion, etc., which he's had to play through. So I think he'll be looking at, one, how's it going at Liverpool? Is it in the same place he was 12, 18 months ago? Is he loved as much? Is he talked about as much? Is he getting the same joy on the pitch? Secondly, what are they paying? Because they'll pay astronomical amounts of money for him. And third, where am I going? Who am I playing with? And will I score loads of goals and assists for my own personal record? You add them up, Saudi's the destination for him.
I do think one consideration which makes me think that he might not go to Saudi, and I could see him maybe more going down the MLS route, is I think the one thing that Salah loves more than anything we've mentioned is his two little girls. He absolutely adores, as most dads do, but he adores them little girls. And when he announced that he was staying at Liverpool, one of the first things he said was, my little girls were happy, and his eldest was very, very happy that they were staying. And in terms of like the culture and the landscape and everything, politically and sort of in terms of the religious element and whatever, his little girls have grown up in a very Western lifestyle. And I mean, that's probably a broader topic, but I think there's maybe an element where if he goes to Saudi, their lifestyle changes massively. Where in a way it wouldn't if he went to the MLS or somewhere else in Europe. And so I do think that is maybe something that he, might consider at some point.
This is the Salah side. What about the Saudi side? They'll do absolutely everything to get him. Oh yeah. So there's one thing Salah's saying, where do I want to go? I think that the Saudi investment group and the Saudi league will be looking at that going, I'm not going to let you go anywhere. they offer, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse kind of thing. So there's two sides of it, isn't it? What does Mo want to do? He might say, oh, I might go to the MLS, or the kids want to go to Disneyland. But they turn around and go, 700-800 grand a week here.
Yeah.
But
It's a different story.
I think the other thing as well, though, is that there's no reason he couldn't do both.
Yeah.
Like the Saudi Arabian League, as much as they might be pumping money into it, as much as they might be wanting to make it, brilliant, blah, 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 it is not a good league with loads of fans. It is not one where a 38, 39-year-old Mo Salah would be like, oh, I just can't compete here. He could, he could go to America for 5 years and then go to Saudi anyway and get the payout, and that might be something, look, I it will not surprise anybody to know that I've got moral objections to Saudi Arabia's sports washing, etc. But, the question for Salah is, going to be more about, well, what, I'm Egyptian. The problem between the two countries is not something that I want the burden of trying to solve. Do I want to go there for all sorts of geopolitical reasons? Maybe not. But maybe the money is so huge that I've got no choice. But I certainly don't want to do that right now because, my daughters are not in a position where I want them to change their lives completely. But actually, maybe he says, I do 3 years in the MLS and then I go there for a season or two, get a big payout. Like that could all happen still within the realms of what, just because he's a bit old, it doesn't matter because he would still take the piss in that league because it's not good enough to it's not, when you've been playing the Premier League.
Would you say the Saudi League's worse than the MLS?
I think it probably is.
Yeah, I think it probably is, yeah.
I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, but just look at that league now. I think it's ranked higher than the Brazilian league now, the Saudi League.
Oh, really?
But I think there are a few players at a few clubs that are brilliant. But then the other ones that are not owned by the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia or whatever, that they're not able to splurge the cash in the same kind of way. And so they are like, conference level teams. So there'll be a couple that are absolutely brilliant that maybe is dragging up the whole league's position in global football. A couple of teams doing that. But overall, the standard is just not good. And there's like, and I know it wouldn't be the case if Mo Salah was there, but there's like 40 people and a dog going to watch the games.
One more point. The other side of Mo's earnings, the sponsorships, which like Liverpool and Adi are one of a long list of high payers to Mo, and to be in commercials, to endorse products, etc., etc. I know there's been instances in the past where Liverpool have had communications partners and had to renegotiate deals because Mo signed a deal with Vodafone Egypt, etc., etc., and we've got a communications partner over here because there's huge money in it for him. So again, you look at the fact that football-wise, but if he goes out there, again, wages, stature, profile, everything goes through the roof.
Yeah. So many different angles and thoughts to approach this from for Mo Salah. I just hope Mo Salah keeps scoring goals for Liverpool forever, to be honest. So if someone can box that for us, that would be absolutely brilliant. Nice one to the guest today for discussing life after Salah in whatever guise it comes. As I say, I hope it's not anytime soon. Up the Reds.